Big D Entertainment, in association with Dipsy Doodle Productions, presents The Dave Holly Hour. Brought to you by TJS Ceramic Studio, Serendipity Studio Gallery and Gifts, Chasers Food and Spirits, Excel Chiropractic, Quality Nails, Jesse Moffitt Entertainment, and the Sioux Falls Arts Council. The Dave Holly Hour features Sioux Empire arts and entertainment conversations. A true lover of arts, entertainment, good food, and fun times, including an occasional Jack Daniels. Okay, so a few Jack Daniels. Here he is, Dave Holly.
Welcome, arts and entertainment creatives, supporters, contributors. As always, great to have you all along. Let me update you on the Dave's Dates calendar. The Vaughty's Early Christmas Party Variety Show, now just 1 week away. It is going to be our biggest show to date. We have great variety, and now we are set at the Icon in downtown Sioux Falls for this wonderful way to start your holidays. And our 2025 shows are going to be there too. Go to our website, thevaughties.com, to get tickets in advance for next Thursday, 7:30 p.m. at the Icon. And again, the Vaughties. And Vaughties is spelled V-A-U-D-I-E-S. So thevaughties.com. Coming up in 2025, then, I will be hosting the 2024 Sioux Falls Funniest Person of the Year Award, January 11th, also at the Icon. And make a date for Valentine's Day weekend. The incredible actor Nancy Tapkin and I will be wanting you to join us over Valentine's Day weekend as we present Love Letters, also at the Icon. As for this show, we finally caught up with filmmaker Andrew Kightlinger as he has been very busy promoting his full-length film, Lost on a Mountain in Maine, and it will be showing at the State Theater in Sioux Falls Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Then we hear from young actors Ollivia Gill and Micah Nelson. They are castmates in Spotlight Theater's production of Mean Girls Jr. But first, let's pop the cork on this bubbly little show.
Time to grab your favorite beverage, lift it high, and toast it to being Thursday, a.k.a. Weekend Eve.
Hey, the weekend isn't around the corner, it's here!
So long, hump day in your frumpy way. We say hello to Thursdays with opening nights. The weekend is near and we can see the bright lights. Yes, Thursday, you're so hearty, we can't wait for Friday, so a day early, we start the party.
Whatever you're drinking and whatever you're drinking it out of might very well be determined by where and when you happen to be listening. My choice, the usual, it's a Jasper Newton, Jack Daniels Diet Coke with a lime. For you, be it a cup of coffee, spot of tea, glass of milk, bottle of water, mug of beer, a cocktail, or glass of wine, flute of champagne. Lift it high and toast to Bob Nelson. It's his birthday today. He is a good friend of ours. He's a great friend of the show and a regular listener, and he's been involved with numerous stage productions, both as actor and behind the scenes. When he's not in a show, guess what you're going to find him doing? Out supporting other shows taking place in the Sioux Empire. He often provides me with Bob's taxi service when I need a ride somewhere, and he gets paid with the same thing I'm sure he toasts each weekend eve with, a grain belt. Cheers to you, Bob Nelson. The Weekend Eve Toast is brought to you by Chasers, West 12th Street and Ellis Road. Chasers has great food and beverages, and on Monday nights at 7, we play Dave Holly Hour Trivia. This coming Monday, November 18th, giving will be our theme. Bring a canned good so we can help provide a great Thanksgiving for someone that maybe needs a boost to start their holiday. Plus, you bring that, you get an extra point toward your team. Honorable mention. What over the past week made Dave laugh, guffaw, chuckle, chortle, giggle, simply smile, or maybe even shed a tear of joy? It's an event that actually is being held tonight at Dakota Military Alliance, 7 o'clock. My Love and I and some friends will be in attendance for Jeff Gould's America's Story presentation. Tickets are $40. However, thanks to a very generous benefactor, all tickets have been paid for. Jeff is a very good friend, traditionally the one guest this show has on Thanksgiving Day. He's set for this one as well. He's also an amazing storyteller and an amazing American. His presentation is neither red nor blue. It is pure red, white, and blue. Later in the show, from Spotlight Theater Company, actors Ollivia Gill and Micah Nelson. In just a couple minutes, filmmaker Andrew Kightlinger on the Dave Holly Hour. Serendipity Studio in downtown Sioux Falls has a great selection of art from local and regional artists. The Giving Thanks exhibit is a reflective exploration of the artist's personal world and invites you to delve into your own feelings of thanks. By the way, art from creatives you know makes for wonderful gifts. Serendipity Studio in the historic Shriver Square building, downtown Sioux Falls.
Check out the new ceramic studio in Sioux Falls, conveniently located off Kiwanis Avenue on 5th Street. TJS Ceramics inside Oscar's Mini Storage. We have thousands of classic vintage ceramic mold items and several new items too. TJS Ceramics offers classes, special open studio nights, and completed ready-to-purchase items. Bisque studio time or painting parties are available. Visit TJS Ceramics Studio in person today or email tjsceramics@gmail.com for more details.
Dr. Perry Langston and Dr. Corey Tooney know excellence is in you. That's why they provide you with excellent care at XO Chiropractic, improving your overall health in spirit, body, mind, and will. Get results the natural way. Arrange a consultation, 605-332-9235 or exokairos.com. Excellent care for excellent people. XO Chiropractic, located at 4309 South Racket Drive in Sioux Falls.
The Dave Holly Hour, like eavesdropping on a great conversation between two very interesting people.
Oh, welcome back, everybody. Sure enough, I got to say it, but we're going to have a little tag to it this time because, yes, it is always a pleasure to talk Sioux Empire arts and entertainment, but today we're adding quite a bit of area to the Sioux Empire. We're adding Los Angeles, Hollywood, California. We're adding Maine. We're adding a great part of the East Coast and a little bit up into Canada. As we talk to Andrew Kightlinger, filmmaker, a South Dakota boy, went to Augie, and has made a major motion picture full length. It's a true story called Lost on a Mountain in Maine. How are you, Andrew?
I am elated to be here. I love this podcast, and I love your voice. Voice.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that greatly. It's taken a while for us to get you on because you are one busy man. But now that we have you on this date, it actually works out perfectly because the State Theater is showing your movie tomorrow night. And let's see, Saturday and then Sunday afternoon?
I believe so, yeah, the 15th through the 17th.
Yeah, and so it's, so we're not doing it today, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We stopped by, we had to go into Duluth trading the other day, so we took a look at the window, and it's like, oh, yeah, we need to come to this. We've already seen it, though.
You have, yeah, and you're actually in it.
Yes, how about that, huh? If you,
you're.
I'm a special thanks.
Yeah, and you actually, if you listen closely, because I've seen it many times now, and when you listen closely, you can hear your voice multiple times in certain parts of the movie, and it always gives me a nice little kind of charge. Dave's voice.
And and here's one thing I want to ask you about. Okay, so. I'm in that last section of credits, a special thanks, and it literally is the last thing before you get the copyright, whatever, on the bottom of the screen. It always is. Yeah, but I sat there and thought, wow, this is really cool. I've got a special thanks in a major motion picture, and I thought, well, what do you get if you are a director? What do you get if you're a lead actor and so forth when you take a look at that? So what was your feeling when we first saw the film?
It's funny. I've worked on this movie now for the last 3 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I got this job in 2021, and now it's coming out, and we shot it in the summer of 2022. And so it's been part of my life and the fabric of my being for so long.
Right.
But I will admit, I think the first time when I saw my name pop up at the end of the movie, directed by Andrew Boodoo Kightlinger,
Mm-hmm.
I think the first time it meant something, where I was sort of had an outer body experience, was when we premiered the movie in Maine. No, actually, it's a different screening. On July, it was the beginning of July, right around the 4th this summer. I did a private screening in my hometown of Pierce, South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
And I invited all the people in Pierre that had supported me over the years, either financially or old film or old teachers from high school that were inspiring to me, that taught me theater and in English and all of the above. And it was a packed house. And it was all these people that meant something to me, that inspired me. And I think watching the movie then, and then seeing my name pop up at the end and hearing, obviously, applause is always nice. But more than anything, I was like, oh, wow. Like, I wouldn't be here without all these people.
Oh.
And also, I can't believe I'm here, and I can't believe I have this. Even if this is the last thing I ever make, hopefully not, making sure that doesn't happen. But even if it is, it's a pretty, I'm very proud of it.
You should be. I mean, it's a great movie. Obviously, we look at it with a little, besides our pride, we're also looking at it with, oh yeah, this is good, because we know the guy and we know some of the process now, right? But let's take a look at it from the box office standpoint. When it came out the first weekend, it cracked the top 20 screen box office, didn't it? As an independent film.
It did. And that's no easy feat in the day and age of streaming and where, the movies that are usually hitting it big at the box office are usually like, big blockbusters and Marvel movies and superhero and things that are franchises. Movies like this don't get released anymore on the big screen, and they had limited marketing dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that it got into the top 20 speaks to a certain thing of people just wanting something like this. I also must say that, because our listeners here probably, I assume mostly from South Dakota, and the surrounding region, that South Dakota was the second biggest market for our numbers behind Maine. So our state really turned out for it, and it's holding in the state, 3 weeks out now, which is brilliant.
Excellent. And now you're going to have, the biggest city in the state taking a look at it on Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon. And hopefully, I would assume that those numbers will continue to grow quite well.
Yeah, I think, a movie like this, the goal, if you can eke out $1 million at the box office with a movie like this, that's a huge win.
Right.
That's a huge win. Because there are movies with movie stars that don't make that amount of money these days. It's just a really fickle business. But we're slated to reach that number, which is pretty exciting.
That's excellent. Now, this is a true story. What year are we talking about? 1939?
1939. So it takes place right before Germany invaded Poland. So about a month before.
What attracted you to this story? Why did you want to make it a film?
I think at first glance, I remember, I think it's important, like the context of me getting it, I got it in an email from my managers, because I have managers representation in Los Angeles. And they didn't give me any context about what it was other than, hey, we put you up for this and they're interested in talking to you. And the only context I had never heard of the story before. I didn't know that it was real, that it actually happened. All I saw was that Sylvester Stallone's company was, had a hand in it. And so, of course, that immediately sparked with me because I'm a big Stallone fan. So And not just like Rocky but I'm a huge Cliffhanger fan, and I have a storied love affair, if you may, with his sort of what he does and everything, you know. So I read the script, and there are two entry points for me. The first one was a kid barefoot in the woods, because that was kind of my childhood. I grew up in Madagascar, and when I say I'm a missionary kid, a lot of people kind of imagine me in like very crisp clothing at a boarding school, but that wasn't my childhood. My childhood was in the villages where my parents would work. They were doctors, and I would run around I grew up with Malagasy children, and I would run around barefoot. So that was kind of my visual, like, okay, I get that. I get what that's like. And then the other thing that attracted to me with it was the simplicity of the story. That it's this very broad family film that is accessible for anybody. And the themes are pretty concrete. The themes are family, community, hope, a little bit of faith, if you want to get into that. And things I think that we just need to be reminded of. So I found it very aspirational, and I thought to myself, this would be fun to bring to the world. And that's where I came from.
And you know what I love about this is you mentioned community, because as you take a look at this film, you see the hundreds of people that volunteered in order to help, and not just to help a family, but also to help all the rangers and the other rescue people, etc. And, making meals for them, making sure everybody had enough rope, they got lanterns, all of that. And that was such a great part of it for me to watch. And then also another thing that I really loved was you put in some clips of a documentary about this story as well.
Yeah. So the community aspect, that was really a huge thing that sparked to me, because, we live, we just came out of an election. Obviously, we could not hear about the election. And there was, I don't know, like this country's very divided. There's a lot of noise and chaos and all this stuff. And what I liked about it, and what it reminded me of, kind of, during COVID, okay, when COVID was happening, there was a lot of, unfortunately, there was a lot of times where people were not taking care of each other, right? Some people said, no, it's my right not to wear a mask, am I right not to do this, yada, yada, yada. And all that stuff was very disconcerting, and I don't know why, like, what's wrong with humanity? At the same time, I also saw examples of the opposite. I saw examples of, for example, a friend of mine, their father was a rancher and a farmer in South Dakota, and he got COVID, and he actually went on a ventilator right during harvest season. It was in the fall, and everybody from the surrounding counties banded together to make sure that everything was harvested, so they didn't lose money. And they basically took on double loads. And I remember seeing that, and that person thankfully came out of that ventilator and is healthier actually because of it, which is great. But like, that was something to me, like, oh, when push comes to shove, we'll be there for each other, no matter what we believe in, which is kind of part, And so what I thought what this movie reminded me of was, like, we are capable in a lurch of helping strangers, and that is sort of the core of human nature. I like to believe that. I'm an optimist. Now, I will always, I'm sure I'll be proven wrong at some point, but that's why I wanted to make something aspirational, because I think that is my view of humanity and my hope for humanity. And so those community aspects are important for me to portray in the movie, and then adding the documentary footage, which was a controversial decision, and it wasn't my decision either. Sometimes directors, you have other people that very few directors have carte blanche, or as they call it in the industry, final cut. Final cut is when a director has reached a certain level, or in their contract, it's contract is negotiated. You have the final say, and nobody in the end can tell you to change something if you refuse to do it. Most directors don't get that. Christopher Nolan has that. I don't even think Spielberg gets that sometimes. It really depends on the budget of the films. So Tarantino gets final cut, but I don't get final cut. So in this process, when we were editing the movie, the producer said, "Hey, we think we should incorporate all this archival footage that we have." And at first I kind of recoiled, as an artist, I was like, well, haven't I done good enough? Like, what's going on? But they explained, like, no, the audience for our film, the Stallone sort of brand and audience, is going to be people of a certain age, and they're going to find this historical stuff interesting. And so then I sat back and I thought about it, and I thought about some of the movies I loved that incorporated that motif into it. One of which was Warren Beatty's Reds, which is a great movie about. Have you seen Warren Beatty's Reds?
I have, back in 1981.
Yeah, okay, yeah. It's a movie. It's like a forgotten masterpiece. It's about the Bolshevik Revolution.
Yeah.
So it's also about this kind of inherently kind of dry subject. So nobody says, "Oh, let's watch Reds tonight." I think it's also like 205 minutes long or something. But it's brilliant, and it's got this brilliant Jack Nicholson performance in it. Everybody forgets he's brilliant in it. And so Beatty used, is it Beatty or Beatty?
Beatty.
Beatty? It's Beatty. Okay.
Beatty.
So okay, Beatty. Okay. So Beatty used documentary footage of people that survived the Bolshevik Revolution throughout it. And I thought, if he can get away with it, why can't I?
There you go. I like it.
So that's what we did. And I made sure that all those things were woven. I dug into about 45 hours worth of footage, archival footage, and picked up parts that I thought would make good chapter headings in the movie, essentially, and kind of guide the audience along and remind us of what was at stake.
Tell us about the principles that are in this. And was there anybody that really stood out that you just thoroughly enjoyed working with? Or was it just, everybody was so great and it helped make your first feature?
What was great about this movie was the fact that I was given a long leash, let's put it that way. It was my first experience working on a studio level with a lot of people kind of, lording over me, for lack of a better word. And I wanted that experience because if I end up making bigger movies on like the big Hollywood level, talking, $50 to $100 million movies, I'm going to be answering to the shareholders. Right. And so, and a lot of times that means you're relinquishing a lot of control. But what was great about this film is that they gave me a long leash. So I was able to hire the people, the artists that I wanted to collaborate with, like the cinematographer and the art director, and even the assistant director, which is a very important position that nobody really thinks of. They essentially schedule the film, which is a really hard job that I would never be able to do. And they're also running the crew so I can focus on the creative aspects of the film. And so I was able to really put together a great team. I interviewed everybody individually. And I set us up for success. So when we were shooting the movie and making it in post-production, there was very little friction, if any at all, to be honest. It was a very smooth ride because I surrounded myself with people that were better than me at their jobs. That just lifted me up.
That's what I do every interview. Get somebody that sounds better than me. We'll go with it. It's a good strategy. It's one of those things where I've been talking to on my. You mentioned at the beginning that I've been busy, and that busyness has been me traveling around the country touring with this movie. And one of the things that I did is in Boston, I talked to quite a few colleges in Boston, including my alma mater, Boston University, which is where I went to film school right after Augie. And I had a captive audience of 100 kids, in a theater. They would watch the film, and then we had a question and answer session. And, these are a lot of kids that want to get into directing. And, the sad truth is that for probably every 100 kids that wants to be a director, maybe one or two of them end up actually directing movies as a career path. Right. So it's really brutal. But I told them, like, one of the core things you should learn is that directing isn't just like, you're not just a creative position. You are, it's important, but it's also a leadership position. And leadership, to me, leadership is surrounding yourself with people that are better than you. That's what leadership is. And then having the vision to
guide all those people forward and embolden them to not only be their best selves, but be the better version of themselves. And that's sort of my ethos when it comes to that. And so that's what I did on this movie. And I think overall, we made something that, to be frank, was a lot better than it had any right to be. And I mean that in the sense that we had everything against us. We had budget against us. We had time against us. We have an industry that's going in a different direction against us in terms of what kind of content's being made. But somehow we came out of it, and I believe made a movie that is both broadly appealing, but also is a work of art. And that was always the goal for me.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Besides the information that you get out of it, the content of the film itself, but the cinematography and so forth. And a lot of that was in Canada, correct?
No,
not a lot. Okay, a lot in New York, a county in New York. Right?
Yeah. We floated Canada as a possible shooting location. Okay, but we just couldn't make it work. So we shot most of it. We shot the movie for 20 days in upstate New York in the Catskills, and then we also shot about 5 days in northern Maine. And so basically what we did is we scouted northern Maine. I went to northern Maine and climbed the mountain, and I saw where the kid was at, and I got myself in his sort of headspace. And that allowed me then in New York to find places that kind of captured the feeling of Maine. It's not going to be exactly the same, and the plants are definitely different. But as our producers, as producers callously say, a tree is a tree is a tree. and there's a reality to that. There's absolutely a reality to that. So we found the places that we need. I tried to find places that were beautiful, but also accessible for the crew and not too dangerous. And we shot the film. And then after 20 days, we went into the editing room. The editor and I pieced the movie together and assembled it onto a timeline. And then we decided what we needed in Maine. We always knew we were going to go to Maine to get a little bit of that authenticity into the film and almost, trick people into thinking we shot there entirely. And then we went to Maine and we shot helicopter aerials where, our cinematographer was, hanging out of a plane, with the camera, and I was in the cockpit, kind of directing the situation. And we also climbed the Titular Mountain, for 18 hours in a storm. We chose the worst weather day possible with camera equipment to capture the elements and to lend that authenticity. So the movie's a combination of both things. Both places. Yeah,
and put together again just in a remarkable way. Shooting in 20 days? Is that a little unheard of?
It's insane. It's in the end that when I'm talking about how the industry is changing, the 20 days is born out of that. Number one, it was born out of week shot, kind of right at the tail end of COVID being COVID. And we still had nearly $300,000 of our budget went towards, testing, daily testing for the crew. So which I think in hindsight, when we look back at it now, was kind of a racket. There are easier, more cost-effective ways. Look, and I'm fully I believed in the pandemic and still do. I was fully on board with it. My dad's an epidemiologist, for God's sake. But I think some people used it as a way to make money. And I think on film sets, there were people that found ways to make money doing it. So that was something where there's $300,000 we could have used for something else, right? And this was a movie largely shot outdoors, so we're not going to be giving each other COVID outdoors in the wild anyway. So there was that thing. There was also just, right now, what's happening in the film industry is that creatives are suffering because things are getting more expensive. And the way to offset those costs is to just shoot for less days. So a movie that should take 35 days to shoot is only getting 20. And that falls on the creatives to figure that out and squeeze things. And sometimes, it's going to suffer. Sometimes, as you probably know, you're an artist. Sometimes when you're under pressure, you actually create the best art.
True.
And there are examples of both in this movie. For example, in this film, there's there's a scene, the bad version, the version that suffers is for, I'm going to be really honest with you for a second, but the version that I'm dissatisfied with, for example, is the opening of the movie. When the father comes home and everybody congregates, that's a scene that should take a day to shoot. I had 2 hours, right? Whereas later in the film, the boy kind of enters the afterlife. This isn't much of a spoiler, but he kind of enters a version of the afterlife, so to speak. And that was originally supposed to be a very visual effects heavy sequence where the forest splits apart and he kind of enters Elysium and he ascends in a way. He's almost ascending as if he's going to die. And he's floating and it's very sort of biblical and ethereal. And there's a lot of stuff going on. And we couldn't afford any of that. And so I went back to the cinematographer and I went back to Hitchcock. And we thought to ourselves, what would Hitchcock do without all the bells and whistles? And literally that sequence now is 3 shots. And they're just all done in camera with crafty lens work and good production design and interesting lighting. And I think the movie's better for those choices. And I see that, and to me, those are some of the best moments of the movie. Yeah. And so it really depends, right? Like you have to squeeze, and sometimes gold comes out of it, and sometimes you're like, could have been better,
Mm-hmm. So tell me, the creature / monster, whatever we want to refer to him as.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So that, we wanted, in the end, this is a family film. And I wanted to make a movie that operated for parents, where parents would see it and, obviously think, oh my God, well, my kids were lost. And, they're kind of feeling the film on a different level. But I also wanted kids to have a sense of awe and wonder. I find that kids' movies in general these days, and just movies in general, never have a sense of awe or wonder about certain subjects. Like, I love the Godzilla movies that they make now. They're really dumb and they're fun, but sometimes I think they forget the awe part. Mm-hmm. That's what made Jurassic Park so great. That's what made E.T. so great, is there's a sense of awe about this unknown thing. So that beast was born out of the desire to have something that kids could be sort of in awe of. And it was born out of this idea that in traumatic situations, kids will often create fantasy in order to cope. And so that's what that creature represents. The creature also represents, to a certain theological degree, there's a bit of a Father, Son, and Holy Spirit thing going on in the movie. Not intentionally. It's more just kind of it is intentional, but it's not meant to really signify anything other than, there's divine power in nature, and that nature, if that bird is meant to be God or Christian God or whatever it is, God is angry in the Old Testament, and that's sort of the mountain God and the storm God that we see in the film. The kid is fearful of it. But then the God becomes the New Testament God later in the film and becomes this benevolent creature who comforts the child and is a balm for him. So I just wanted to play with all those ideas. And shockingly, as big of a swing as it is creatively, it seems to be a moment that people really love. Even adults come out like, oh, I love that sequence. I'm like, wow, I didn't really expect that, especially when the movie is careening between that, magical realism and also like documentary footage. It's a tonal tightrope that you really have to kind of be careful with. So that's why that creature's there. And, and I got to admit, the creature did not look good when we designed it. It was one of those things where we, at the last minute, we had just like, let's just put it in silhouette with lights behind it. And that should do it. And I think, again, that's one of those creative limitation moments where that actually worked in our favor.
Mm-hmm. Definitely worked. What did you learn about yourself in the whole process of this?
What a great question.
I get one in per interview. It only took 29 minutes.
No, all the questions have been great. There are multiple things. One of my big fears going into this movie, because this was a pretty big level up for me in terms of budget. My last feature, Tater Tot and Patton, which we made in South Dakota, was $140,000 budget. And this movie is in the many millions of dollars. I'm not allowed to say publicly what it is.
Right.
But it's 140,000 was half of our catering budget on this movie. So it gives you kind of an idea. And so I was afraid that for some reason, in order to be the leader and to make it work, that I would have to be a different person. And by that, I mean that I tend to lead with a certain level of kindness. Part of it is because I'm genuine about it. Part of it is also because I have this, this deep-seated, maybe slightly off-kilter need to be liked, but we don't need to psychoanalyze me. But generally, like I want people to fun when they're making art. I don't think that art needs to be born of suffering. And so what I did was I just kind of leaned into it. At first, I'm like, am I going to have to be, an asshole, essentially, in order to make this movie, in order to make sure that people make the film I want to make? But that turned out not to be the case. What I did is I leaned into my strengths, which was bringing people together, lifting people up. Like, oh, it's amazing what just saying thank you to somebody at the end of a hard work day, or being like, that what you did today was great, knowing their name. Those things are like, undeniable in terms of like being a leader and bringing people together. So what I learned, maybe it's a self-serving answer, is that I can make another movie next time and kind of lean into those qualities. At the same time, I also learned that sometimes you have to be a boss, and sometimes you have to maybe be a little harder than you want to be. And sometimes in this movie, I wasn't that way. And so the thing that I learned is on the next film, there are certain areas where I will have to just say, you know what? No, this is what we're doing. Because in the end, I know had I said something, we would have a better outcome creatively. So that's one of the big things I learned, is it's a balance between being nice and being a benevolent leader, but then also being a boss. And if somebody can figure out both of those things, I think that's like the golden ticket. Then there's the opposite. Then there's the Donald Trump method, right? Which is a whole. We don't need to get into that, but that's like a method I don't. that's a method that I don't adhere to. And so that's like one of the many things I learned, I guess, in the movie.
What got this all started for you? How did you fall in love with film and decide not just to be in one, but you said, I'd rather direct it, shoot it?
So, I always go back to E.T. I go back to E.T., but it goes a little deeper than that. So growing up in Madagascar, I was around 5 years old. So Madagascar is always, I always say, this might be not fair to say, but I don't know, I think most people would agree. Madagascar is always about 20 years behind the rest of the world, no matter what era it is. So in the 80s and early 90s, we were still kind of, way, way back. And even today, road infrastructure in Madagascar is not great. It's one of the top 10 poorest countries in the world. So it's very, infrastructure just not great. So if you want to drive, let's say 200 miles, it might take you 4 or 5 days. You can't just zip off from
Right.
Brookings to Sioux Falls in 45 minutes. It's going to take you time because the roads are washed out. There's potholes everywhere. Sometimes there's no road at all. So it's just dirt, and you're just kind of bouncing your way slowly. You got to have a car with good tires. So what the missionaries would do is we had this footlocker, and we called it the Red Island Video Club. And the Red Island moniker comes from the fact that Madagascar is famous for its manganese-rich earth. So if you're in the International Space Station, which unfortunately I have not had the privilege of doing yet, who knows, Dave? Maybe
Shatner did.
Shatner did, yes. I think they should send you up.
I think so too. I would love it.
I really think so.
Yeah.
I would love for you to do a podcast from the International Space Station.
That would be awesome. Just
would you
think,
go?
You can have a yes. You can have a listener in Bangladesh, and a few seconds later, who knows what country you're over.
Exactly. I think that'd be great. I'm glad to hear that you go. I would go too.
Oh, yeah. In a heartbeat.
I would absolutely, in a heartbeat. It'd be such a great experience. So anyway, I'm going off the rails here, but we're getting back on track. So when you look at Madagascar from the ISS, it looks red sometimes because of that manganese earth. So hence the Red Island Video Club. And it was this old footlocker made of wood with, like metal buttresses all over the place. And buttress is not the right word, but it doesn't matter. And it was filled with VHS tapes that were recorded off of American television, and they weren't bought from the store. It was somebody who put in a blank tape and recorded E.T. on TNT or NBC, or maybe The Sound of Music. And then they would stop recording when the commercials hit. Sometimes they'd forget, and then you'd still have like you'd have a Burger King ad and, Wells Fargo ad or something. And then eventually you get back to the movie. So, and then all these so this big trove was in there, and there are all these movies like E.T. and Goonies and The Black Stallion and Empire of the Sun, and some movies I probably shouldn't have been watching, like Jagged Edge, things like that. And that Foot Locker would make its way from missionary family to missionary family, taking that kind of bone-rocking, car ride for many days, and then would stay with the family for months on end, and the family would slowly watch all the films. And then when they were done, whenever somebody was taking supplies to a new part of the island, that Foot Locker would travel with them and then go to a new family. So that Foot Locker was my film education, and it was the thing that kind of lit my fuse creatively. And E.T. was the movie that the first full-length movie that I had the youngest recollection of seeing and being affected by its power. And that I brought that to this film. When I first read Lost on a Mountain in Maine, the last 10 pages of the script, I thought to myself, oh, this is a symphony. This final 10 pages is a symphony of music and emotional catharsis. And that we're going to have a theme woven throughout the movie that comes to its apex at the end. And that's how E.T. is. E.T. is wall-to-wall music for the last 10 minutes. And it ends, it's John Williams just sort of swinging for the fences. And it ends on a close-up of Elliot looking at E.T.'s spaceship. It was the brilliance of that movie, is it ends on a close-up of a boy. So I knew from the moment I read the screenplay, even before I was hired, that this movie would end with a symphony of score, and that it would end on the close-up of the boy hugging his father. And so I took that image from my childhood, that thing that made me feel something, and I brought it onto this film. So that's kind of where it all started. And then from there, I just became obsessed. And, my parents are both scientists, so much to their chagrin, their only child was really into movies. And I think acting was my first sort of interest. Jim Carrey came about when I was at that impressionable age, and I really wanted to be him, and I would act like him. And I think I still carry a lot of his mannerisms, unfortunately. No, fortunately.
Yeah.
I think he's great. He's a genius. There's nobody else like him, and I don't know if there ever will be again. Or maybe maybe once every 50 years there's a comedic talent that pushes the boundaries. Do you like Jim Carrey?
I do. I was not originally a huge fan, but now it's one of those where I go back and see something and go, God, yeah, he has talent. And some of the things obviously were just kind of stupid, but then you also think, what comedian hasn't fallen on their ass before and died on stage or anything along that line, and then all of a sudden something big happens and you are going, wow, this man is funny. And, I think that happens. There's a lot of music now that I hear and go, that was actually a good song. And when it was popular, I was like, oh, no, not again. Yeah.
Yeah. What's an example of one of those songs? Because I have one. Mine was Hey Ya by Outkast. I hated that song when it first came out, but now I love it.
Mine was basically anything by Michael Jackson. Yeah. And now I hear those songs and just go, wow, that was awesome. And it's just the way you form opinions and so forth. And then you got to make sure that you're honest about those opinions. Just like, every time that I take a look at something and go, oh, wow, that's not really that good. And then I'll look at it again and go, that made an impact. And I think that's what people forget about when it comes to arts and entertainment is that it may not be beautiful on the outside, may not meet the pretty test, but it makes the beauty test because of its realism and what it evokes as emotion.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's kind of what Jim Carrey, to me, this was like an artist who's just putting themselves, almost beating themselves up for the audience. And I remember this past year, one of the beauties of living in Los Angeles is, well, they do this in, the State Theater does this in Sioux Falls now, which is a gift for Sioux Falls. But there's a theater here that did a triple feature of Jim Carrey movies. And my friends and I decided, we're going to take the day off. We're also artists, so it's easy for us to do that. And we're like, let's go to this triple feature, which started at 3 p.m. and went into the night. And it was Dumb and Dumber and Liar Liar and The Mask. And I remember when we were watching all three of them, it was great. The whole thing was great. And I remember at the end of Liar Liar, I said to myself, this guy, like, no wonder he's a recluse now who just paints in Hawaii. Like, for a big part of his life, he just threw himself onto the floor for people's entertainment. And there is nobody doing that now. Maybe there will be at some point. I think every society needs that at some juncture. But, I think that humor is a little different now, but nobody does what he does. So anyway, I was captured by him as a kid, and I wanted to be him. And when we moved to the US when I was 12, I kind of took on the Jim Carrey persona and became sort of the comedy guy in the theater, and would star in Anything Goes, and I'd play Moonface, I'd play the comedic relief, and I was Mortimer Brewster, which is a very physical role in Arsenic and Old Lace, and just be crazy. But it wasn't until I went to Augie that I realized that acting takes a certain level of vulnerability that maybe is a little scary for me. I don't know. Yeah, it's a little like, ooh. But I noticed in taking acting classes that I really liked helping other actors get to that place. Say, well, why don't you try this? And why don't you try that? And I remember reading, books about Stanislavski and all these methods and thinking, these methods are fascinating. And every actor has a different access point about how to get to a place emotionally. And maybe I can be the person who can understand all of those things and instinctually. But in the end, it was an instinct. I just had this instinct for directing. And I also, had images in my head that I needed to put on screen. And so that's how I ended up becoming a director, was wanting to do all of it in a way.
Who did you learn under at Augie?
Julia Prashad Bennett was my acting. Yeah. Yeah. And she was wonderful, and she starred in one of my first short films that I made. She's brilliant.
Yeah. When we were talking about Jim Carrey, and when you mentioned The Mask, that was the final out of those three for that festival. I think that's the show that I really said, wow, and started to enjoy him. And that's one of those, I call it a default movie. If it comes on, no matter where it is, whatever point it is in the movie, I will watch it the rest of the way. Yeah, and so I got a handful of them. First and foremost, A Few Good Men.
I love that movie.
Oh, you were talking earlier about Nicholson. Wow, I love doing the imitation of him with "Until you pick up a weapon and stand a post." All of that.
Yeah.
Just such great stuff. Who do you admire as a director that you want to get to that level?
I think Spielberg is an obvious answer, but that's almost saying I want to be being a baseball player and saying I want to be Babe Ruth. It's a little bit insane. I think that's one of those things where society kind of dictates those things and what kind of stuff you're making. But I will say, like, he was a huge influence on me, and his earnestness is something that I aspire towards. He's often dinged for that, for being an earnest filmmaker and wanting to make aspirational films that are hopeful. And oftentimes I see people who love art films and cinema that kind of poo-poo him and I think it's very condescending because he can command the art form in a way that nobody else can. And again, like, art does not have to come from suffering, And so he's one of them. I think another one, I like this. I think Lost in a Mountain again represents kind of what I yearn to do. Like this, it's a very broad film that is sentimental and it's accessible for people, and yet it's artsy, and there are visual cues that are taken from Russian cinema and from Kubrick cinema. The scene with the bed at the end is very much a 2001 Space Odyssey when he enters, right before he becomes the Star Child. Like, it's taking from those things. So there's no reason that I can't have both. So for me, like Terrence Malick, who makes very sort of, you would say, inaccessible poetic films that are more museum pieces than they are movies. He's a huge influence on me because the way he uses light. But I'm also like, my goal is to be multiple directors and sort of have my own voice and kind of journey through different genres. My management team is always kind of dismayed because they want to put me in a certain box. Like, okay, now you just did a movie with kids. Let's put you in that box. I'm like, I don't want that. Everything, all kinds of themes interest me. Human nature interests me. So right now I'm writing a horror thriller next that is extremely, extremely different from this.
Right.
And I've also written a legal thriller, that is basically, it's the Verdict, meets Silence of the Lambs.
Ooh.
So I know. And again, these are movies that like don't get made anymore. So I'm going to probably have an uphill battle getting them made, but they all represent to me themes that interest me. And the theme on this film was, how do we survive? And the why behind why we survive. It isn't just because we're tough and we can crawl through mud or something. It's because we have something back home we need to get home to. And so what are the reasons for living? And with the next movie, I will, I think maybe if there's a common thread through all my movies, it's loss. I think that's probably one of the common threads. Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Andrew Kightlinger, filmmaker, a South Dakota boy, and Madagascar too. But spent some time at Augie before he went on out to Boston to get his film degree. It's been a pleasure, my friend. And
Thank
again,
you so much.
Yeah, anytime. And so we've got Lost on a Mountain in Maine, which is playing at the State Theater in Sioux Falls Friday night, Saturday night, late Sunday afternoon. All right, Andrew, got to ask the two questions that are tradition for a first-time guest.
All right.
If you are not part of the arts and entertainment world, what do you like to be entertained by?
I hate to say politics, but politics is very
it's entertaining.
Maybe it should be less entertaining. That's probably part of the problem. But no, I always say, like, if I wasn't doing this, I'd probably enter politics. So, but I'm also just very entertained. Yeah, very entertained by it.
Yeah. All right. What about any other hobbies?
Any other hobbies? I'm trying to pick more up, but I'm a runner. Can running be a hobby?
I would call it that because I certainly won't do it.
Yeah, so I'm a long distance runner, and I'll go and I'll run, I'll try to get at least I try to get at least 30 to 50 miles a weekend.
Wow.
It's kind of my goal. Yeah. And I always do like one big long run, 10 to 12 miles.
Mm-hmm.
The longest I've ever run is a 50K, which is 31 miles. I think. Yeah, 31. Yeah. And that was during COVID, and I kind of did that. And I said, you know what? I don't need to run any farther than that. That was enough.
That's enough. All right.
So running is where I get a lot of my kinks out in my head. So.
Fantastic. Andrew, thank you again so much for having the time to be on. Yes. And we'll be back with more of the Dave Holly Hour in just a moment.
Comedy magician and hypnotist Jesse Moffat's right. He can't play the piano, but he can sure entertain crowds with his amazing magic and clever quips. His shows always make the participants the stars, especially when they've fallen asleep on stage. They've been hypnotized. Are you the party planner in your group? Then you owe it to your group to make the event magical, even if it puts you to sleep. Here's how.
For booking information, go to Jesse Moffitt Entertainment on Facebook. That's JESSEMOFFITT. Or call 605-929-0964.
Ladies, when it's time to give your nails some love, get that extra special treatment from Quality Nails on South Minnesota Avenue in Sioux Falls. Manicures and pedicures that look great and make you feel fantastic. Zaya and Tony provide professional care for your hands and feet, whether you just want the basics or an extra special look with added flair. Oh, and guys, it's okay to treat yourself too. Quality Nails. Call for an appointment. 605-334-1463.
It's the podcast that creatives in the Sioux Empire listen to so they can learn more about other creatives. It's the Dave Holly Hour.
Oh, as per usual, I'll say it because not only did I write it for my own contract, but additionally, I like saying it. It's always a pleasure to talk Sioux Empire arts and entertainment. That's what I do week to week, and it's always exciting when I get new guests, and it's even better when they're involved in an old organization that became a new organization recently. Mm-hmm. The first time that I have had young actors in from now Spotlight Theater, it's Ollivia Gill and Micah Nelson. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and we're going to talk a little bit about the whole transition, the rebranding, and so forth, too. But we want to talk first about the show that the two of you are in, Mean Girls Jr.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So first of all, Ollivia, tell us the part that you have.
I play Katie Heron.
Mm-hmm. And the background, the backstory on Katie?
Yes. So she lives in Africa with her parents, and then they decide to move to the United States, and she kind of encounters high school for the first time and is taking it all in and finding the different cliques.
Oh, and some of those cliques
it.
are so fun, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I suppose you actually experienced that in your own high school?
Yeah. It's pretty relatable.
I was going to say, I think every high school has that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how it all comes out then. All right, so Micah, what is your role?
So I play Aaron Samuels.
Mm-hmm.
And basically he's just, I guess, your average high school guy.
Yeah.
He seems pretty normal. He's Katie's, I guess, love interest.
Okay.
In this show. And yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ollivia, you're from Del Rapids.
Yes, I am.
All right. What grade are you now?
I'm a senior.
You are a senior.
Yes.
Any aspirations after senior?
Yeah.
And still be in theater?
I am planning on studying theater at the college level. I don't have a specific school in mind yet, but that is the plan. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Mr. Nelson, what about you?
I also think I'm probably going to do something in the arts, whether it's music or theater. I do have a couple colleges on the list between Augie and SDSU, but still pretty undecided.
Ah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that happens at this time, you know?
Yeah.
It's always tough to make that final decision as to where you want to spend 2 to 4 years or 7 or anything like that.
Absolutely.
You can save the panicking till spring.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And now we just have fun.
That's a way to put it. Save the panicking. Speaking of saving the panicking, either of you get stage fright now?
Well, I think I'm always nervous, but it's never, I don't think it affects my performance too much anymore.
Yeah, I'd agree. I feel like I've been doing this for long enough that it's just kind of something that you get used to.
All right, so this used to be called DAPA, Dakota Academy of Performing Arts. They rebranded now to Spotlight Theater Company. But you two were already involved in it. And so how long have you each been in DAPA, now Spotlight?
Ooh.
I started in high school, the beginning of high school. I did, my first show was White Christmas, and I was a freshman. So
okay.
I started It was pre-COVID. I think it was my 7th grade year, so it would have
Wow.
been like 2019.
Mm-hmm.
My first show was Flat Stanley Jr., which ended up getting postponed because of COVID.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So that is one of the things that now Spotlight Theater concentrates on are a lot of the musicals,
Mhm.
but in the junior. And so they get condensed down a little bit,
Yep.
but we still get the full effect of the story and the content, don't we?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, tell us, let's go first with you, Micah.
Okay.
What drew you to theater?
Well, in Madison, there's not a whole lot of arts like opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
especially not in high school, like middle school and like lower. So I had always wanted to do something in the arts. And I actually did something in Brookings with the Prairie Repertory Theater.
Okay.
I did their production of Wizard of Oz. And one of the people that was in it just recommended DAPA, or now Spotlight.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a try.
Uh-huh.
Auditioned and made it on my first try, and I've been doing it ever since.
Okay. What is it about DAPA versus, because you just made a great point that, not every school has the acumen to have a lot of arts.
Yeah.
So that obviously was something that drew you to it, but once you got into it, what was the feeling for you there?
I don't know. It was just a fun opportunity, I guess.
So Olivia,
Yes.
what is your draw to being on stage?
Well, I didn't do theater at all until I think I did my first show when I was 12 years old, and I think I didn't really understand what theater was until that time, which is so weird to me because it's such a big part of my life
Right.
now. But I definitely always loved music, and I loved dancing around. I've always been big kind of performer attitude, but I never went to a lot of shows and stuff. And then at some point, I think I saw Les Mis when it came to Sioux Falls in like 2019. No. Yeah, maybe 2019. And that might have sparked something in me. And I was like, well, why don't I try out theater? And then, yeah, I did a production in Sioux Falls, but it wasn't DAPA/Spotlight. And then COVID happened, so I didn't really have anything for a while.
Right.
And then I just got back into it in high school, and I really got into it then.
Now, in terms of what Spotlight does, obviously you both have been in there for about 4 years, basically, or more. And you obviously have the audition experience, and you have the already being on stage experience a few times. But what is it that DAPA does that makes it, well, now Spotlight, that makes it such a strong program? How is it able to, because you both obviously put in the time and the effort for this, coming from Del Rapids and Madison. And so that's not like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to go down to the local playhouse and, be on stage and so forth. So what makes you want to get back on the road for rehearsals and meetings and everything else?
Well, I mean, I've always just seen theater as a passion, and that's just kind of always how it's been. So I haven't really seen it as like an issue. It's just kind of been like, oh yeah, I just go to rehearsal, and it's just kind of just how it works.
It is. It's part of life for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So do you remember that audition?
I do. It was, I don't know. It's just kind of normal. It's just kind of.
Had you auditioned before for anything?
I did some stuff in elementary school,
and like you said, Prairie Rep.
Yeah, and then with the Prairie Repertory Theater as well. But for my first audition, I remember that I went in. I was super nervous just because it was new thing. I had no idea what was going on. I had practiced for probably like a month and a half, and yeah, I just kind of went in, did my best, and just kind of crossed my fingers and hope for the best.
Ollivia, your first audition, what was that like?
Well, my first 2 DAPA shows were both virtual auditions, so not so
right.
nerve-wracking. I had multiple tries. That was kind of just as they started picking up after the pandemic hit, and they just had virtual auditions. And I remember kind of being unsure because I didn't know that much about the program and who's involved and what people expected. So yeah, it was kind of scary in that way, but I didn't perform in front of somebody until like my third audition, which was like a year later. So it wasn't too bad.
All right. So you have coming up Mean Girls Junior. And have you seen Mean Girls in the past?
I have seen the movie version, but don't flame me here, but I've not seen the musical version.
No. Not blaming at all. Just also wonder when it's something that's been a popular movie, popular musical, do you look at what's already been done? Because, every actor wants to put their own spin on a character, but do you draw from the ones that you've already seen?
I think it's kind of something I'll do when I am starting up a show. I'll look back on past things, just kind of get excited about it. I kind of see what my favorite parts of the show are and like, I'm excited to work on this part. But after that, like when I really get into working on it, I try not to look too much at past ideas and actresses because I don't want that to change what I want to bring to the table.
Yeah, that's an important part for every artist, you want to be different in the way that you approach things. So, Micah, when it comes to you having seen the movie at least, and the character that you're playing, what comes along with it? What did you say, nope, not going to do that? Here's what I am going to do.
Yeah. So I had seen the movie previously, and then I rewatched it when I got cast just to kind of get my mind fresh. And I just kind of like really paid attention to Aaron as a character, and like you said, took parts out that I was like, ooh, I like that, and was like, ooh, maybe I don't like that as much, and just kind of picked apart the character itself and wanted to make it my own.
Who's directing this show?
Molly.
Yeah, Molly.
I don't know her last name.
I think it starts with a W, I think.
Molly, okay. And what have you been learning from Molly then?
Well, she does really... What's been really fun for our cast is at the start of every rehearsal, she kind of gets us together to mingle, is what she calls it. We kind of warm up with questions where we get to talk to each other as a cast. We'll walk around and they'll play music, and then they stop it, and then we'll have a little conversation with someone about a random question. And we kind of implemented that for this show, and I think it really helps us connect as a cast more.
Right.
And when you're doing a show that's set like in high school, you're going to connect with the characters more, and you want to kind of have a trust in the cast, and you can act like friends in the show. You want to know people if you're going to be working with them.
One of the things that comes along with being in the theater is you end up with a quote unquote theater family.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so 4 years in now, how does your theater family compare now to those first years that you were in?
I definitely feel like the family aspect has grown a lot, especially having reoccurring castmates coming in as like fresh new person. You don't really know anybody, so you're just kind of like keeping to yourself, whereas especially in our situations, we feel comfortable walking up to anybody in the cast and just being like, hey, how was your day? Like, how are you?
Yes. Yeah, you got that seniority in there too.
Absolutely.
But I was just thinking about what Ollivia had said about what you guys do prior for a warm up and so forth. It's like, boy, that really even makes it easier for that to happen.
Yes.
For
Exactly.
that theater family.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
I think I've had that in other shows where I get nervous for the rehearsal because I'm like, oh, I don't know everybody too well. I need to find ways to start conversations with people. And then when we already have that, if people don't feel as comfortable, you can really build relationships so much quicker and get to the actual work, and not just be at rehearsal like, oh, I don't know anybody, like what's going on. Yeah.
For sure. I definitely feel like I'm more so looking forward to rehearsal and not to the end of rehearsal.
Oh, see, that's you guys are a step ahead of most people. Then, some people that get into it go, "Oh, what am I going to do for the next 2 to 3 hours here?"
Yeah.
What about the future? You both talked about continuing. with theater when you go to college. But what about, even beyond that? Have aspirations for certain goals, maybe a role that you want to play or anything?
Ooh.
I've never had like a really strong dream role. I think it's what I really love about theater is more just the people and connecting and creating something as a group. And so that's just kind of always what I'm looking forward to. A great thing about theater is you learn stuff in theater and then you can apply it to so many other creative arts and any real job. But so I plan on just doing anything in creation, and I think my favorite projects will just be the ones with the best people and that like the people that I like the most. That's always how it is for shows. Like if I really like the people, I'm really going to love the show.
Right.
Absolutely. Like I said, I want to pursue something with the arts. I would probably have my arts major and then pair it with like a business minor because
smart.
I know, because I know where we are in little old South Dakota. There's not a whole lot of opportunities with like jobs in production and theater and stuff like that. So I also know that it's important to have that pairing so that I can go into, let's say, like a job interview for a big corporation. I can be like, hey, I can talk to people. Like, let's say I have marketing background. I can just be like, hey, I can talk to people. I have my theater background. I know how to work with people. So
yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I have a great niece that can't remember where in Indiana, the college that she went to, but she was in theater for 4 years and I never really thought she would be. I didn't see her as being that. She absolutely loved it and spent one summer out at Black Hills. And now, after graduating from college, she works at a museum in Chicago.
Yeah.
And just, she applies what she learned in theater to her job daily.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just so great that we get to see that. But I am going to not necessarily disagree with you, but I just want to say that there are far more things to make a living in the arts in Sioux Falls, especially.
True, absolutely.
Than there were 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's been so great to see the explosion. I grew up down in Rock Rapids. And, first time I could drive here at age 16, the population sign said 68,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and now it's 218,000.
Yeah.
But when I started working in this town 20 to 25 years ago, I think it was, there wasn't much either. And when I grew up, it was okay if you wanted to go up Sioux Falls and catch the arts, you were going to one of the theaters. And I don't mean stage theater. It was you were going to the State, or you were going out to the big mall, because they had 7 screens, all that type of stuff. And there were some places that were available for viewing, but nothing like we have now. And then if you were going to go see, something really classy, it was usually the symphony at Christmas.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. And I think of how many shows my wife and I go to now. And, there's a lot of people say, well, you ever gone? Well, sure, I've gone out of town and gone to some things, but man, there is just so much happening here. And I am so thrilled by that. And I'm thrilled that you've got people such as yourself getting involved in Spotlight Theater and in such a great organization. And I can see the passion in your eyes, and people can hear it on this. And it's just a wonderful way to keep the arts not just going, but growing.
Yes.
And so thank you both. Certainly appreciate the fact that you were willing to jump in something like this and continue with it.
Yeah.
And also thankful you're here on my show. And because I have always been a supporter of it. And, Debbie Jones has carte blanche on this show.
Oh, okay.
She says, Dave, can I get in a couple of kids from Spotlight talk about Mean Girls? Yeah. What time?
Yeah.
Line it up. I'm here. But I will support so many things, not just, doing this, but, we buy a lot of season tickets to things too. And we're very, very thankful for that.
Yes.
All right. So when it comes to not being involved in theater, what do you like to be entertained by?
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
What is my life without the performing arts? Well, I do really love like hiking and nature. I think just a lot of places in South Dakota are a little underrated. We act like we just have fields and stuff, but I feel like anywhere I go, there's always like a great place to just walk, look at trees. That's something I really enjoy.
What's your favorite?
Well, my own town, Del Rapids. Yeah, we have a trail that goes along the Big Sioux River,
right?
And it's just so beautiful. Like I discovered it when I was in middle school, and then I just like started going all the time. It's literally just really close to my house, but I'm like, how is it so beautiful, so close to me?
Right? Yeah, and then I think of places like Devil's Gulch and Palisades Park.
Oh yeah, Palisades is beautiful,
wonderful,
yes,
and
just
course. So many great things to do. Any other hobbies then?
Yeah. Well, this summer I started playing tennis.
Oh.
Me and my friends started
not pickleball?
having not pickleball. We're doing the opposite of the trend. We started playing tennis on Tuesdays. We had a little tennis Tuesday, and we would just like wake up pretty early and get on our gear and go to McKinnon Park and play tennis. We did it in Del Rapids for a little bit, but then we were like, it's more fun in Sioux Falls. So yeah. That's something I kind of had fun with.
We take our dog, who is Charlie, the mascot of this show. He gets to go over to McKinnon quite often.
Oh, yeah.
And loves to bring home big pieces of bark. And it's like, you realize you're only 5 pounds, 9 ounces. But somehow he carries it. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Big dog in a little dog's body.
Exactly. Micah,
yes.
When you're not on stage, what do you like to be entertained by?
I am a huge car guy, actually.
Oh,
I follow
muscle cars. Or?
Actually, I follow like Formula One pretty closely.
Okay.
Huge McLaren fan, Ferrari as well. So.
Did you know Robin Burns?
Robin Burns? I don't think so.
Okay. Part of the rebranding of Sioux Empire Community Theater to the Premier Playhouse was Robin. They were in a world of hurt. He's from England.
Oh, okay.
And I met him not long after he had moved here. In fact, he was the first guest on this show.
Really?
Yes. Wow. And he is a huge Formula One fan. I mean, he will not miss, even if he's, because he's over in England most of the time now, but he's back in the States probably, 3 to 4 months out of the year. And, he'll even find a bar that actually has that even if it's like 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
So that's fun. What about other hobbies then?
I like gaming, I guess.
Okay.
I have a friend from Montana.
D&D?
Like video games normally.
Okay.
I have a friend from Montana that I stay pretty connected with. We play like numerous games, especially racing games. Just have fun.
Well, fantastic. So, Micah Nelson and Ollivia Gill, thank you again both so much for taking some time out of your day, because I'm guessing you're headed to rehearsal.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Tell us again when the show is.
It is this Thursday through Sunday, the 14th through 17th. And then they're all 7 p.m. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 2 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. Lots of shows then.
Yep.
Well,
5 shows.
Yeah.
5 shows.
Well, break a leg.
Day.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again for taking the time to be on here. Again, Spotlight Theater putting on Mean Girls Jr. All right, we'll be back to wrap up the Dave Holly Hour in just a moment.
Check out the new ceramic studio in Sioux Falls, conveniently located off Kiwanis Avenue on 5th Street. TJS Ceramics, inside Oscar's Mini Storage. Bisque, studio time, painting parties, and finished items are available. Visit TJS Ceramic Studio in Sioux Falls today.
Never met a meal he didn't like. Here he is, Dave Holly.
Thanks again to my great guests, Andrew Kightlinger and Ollivia Gill and Micah Nelson. All 255 episodes are available online at davehollyhour.com. Don't forget to use the search function for previous guests and topics. You'll also find links to Arts South Dakota and the Sioux Falls Arts Council. Speaking of them, as the Sioux Falls Arts Council says, together we art. As Arts South Dakota says, home is where the art is. As I say, put some art in your heart. Remember, my name is Dave Holly, and for me, every day is a holiday.
The Dave Holly Hour has been brought to you by TJS Ceramic Studio, Serendipity Studio Gallery and Gifts, Chasers Food and Spirits, XL Chiropractic, Quality Nails, Jesse Moffitt Entertainment, and the Sioux Falls Arts Council. If you would like to contribute to the continued success of this podcast, simply buy Dave a cup of coffee. Go to davehollyhour.com and click on the coffee cup icon. Don't forget to stay up to date on the show by following on Instagram and Facebook. The Dave Holly Hour is produced in the Dipsy Doodle Studios by Big D Entertainment.
Thanks for listening.